We have with us Ms. Kritika Goyal in IIPA campus. She has secured All India rank 14 in Civil Service Examination 2022. Kritika, congratulations to you. Tell us something about yourself.
Thank you so much, sir, for the warm welcome. My name is Kritika Goyal. I come from Sonipat, which happens to be in Haryana. I've done my 12th from Sirsa in Haryana itself. Then I went on doing my graduation in law from Gujarat National Law University, and I passed out in the year 2019. And that is when I also gave my first attempt, and this was my fourth attempt at UPSC when I cleared it with AIR 14.
What you did differently this time compared to what you could not do in the last 3 attempts?
So in the first 2 attempts, I did not clear prelims only, so that was a big hurdle for me. So in the third attempt that I had given, and in the fourth attempt as well, I made sure that I solved a lot of mocks. So that was one thing. Apart from it, sir, if I look at the difference between third attempt and fourth attempt, in mains as well, I did a lot of mock practice. That really helped. And I did the reverse when it comes to interviews. So in my third attempt, when I gave interview, I had given a lot of mocks. This year, I didn't give a lot of mocks. It was 2 to 3 maximum, because I thought I'll practice on my own and see where is it that I lack. So I think that is how the journey has evolved for me.
Benefit our future aspirant, what needs to be done in the preliminary so that they don't face this hurdle?
So I think the first thing is previous year questions are extremely important. So previous year questions, if aspirants look for, they would see that there are certain themes which get repeated every year. So that's very important to have an eye for, and the past 5 to 6 years papers have to be looked into, and then the theme wise questions have to be also looked into. And when we are reading, we must have an eye that as to are we able to cover those questions which have come in the past. One is that. The second thing is a CSAT, because I have fared really bad in CSAT. I lost my one attempt because of CSAT. It's very important now to practice a lot of CSAT question papers, because sometimes we ignore CSAT also. That also should not be ignored. So I would say practice and CSAT should not be ignored.
There is a exponential growth in the material. How do you shortlist your material on the basis of which you start preparing?
So what I did was that a number of toppers have recommended a number of books. So I listened to a lot of toppers firstly, and then I made my own list. So my formula was one subject, one book. So if it is history, I will not read anything apart from this. But this came after listening to a lot of videos, searching a lot of online. Then I felt, oh, this is how I have to filter out. I think filtration is extremely important, and then just sticking to one book, and that is it.
Could you mention some of the books which you followed?
So for example, polity, it was Lakshmikant for me, and I didn't do anything apart from that. And when it comes to geography, I just did class 11th and 12th NCRTs. Apart from it, nothing else. And if I wouldn't understand anything, I will complement it with some YouTube videos. When it comes to history, for example, ancient history has to be just class 11th NCRT. Medieval history just has to be NCRT only again. So that is how, for example, economics, there's a book which comes out by Sriram IAS. I just refer to that only. Environment is Shankar IAS. I just refer to that. That is how one book, one subject went for me.
What is your mantra for CSAT?
So mantra is, firstly, again, previous year questions are important. There are themes which get repeated every year. There are particular questions you will find on, for example, there's a question on set or percentages. There are some 10 to 12 themes that get repeated every year. Now we have to start practicing them, and especially for those who are coming from non-engineering background, because that is how I had also faced problem. Firstly, identification of those themes, and then practicing, and then mock tests. I think these are the 3 steps towards CSAT.
CSAT, there are 80 questions,
Yes.
but if you correctly answer 27 and no wrong answer, you will be through. What is your advice to the future aspirant?
So the same only, like the thing is that there are only 27 questions, but now because we always aim for attempting more questions, like it has to be 40 or 45, we do a lot of negative marking. So choosing the questions are also very important. That time when I'm sitting in the paper, I have to see which is that question that will give me the 100% result, which is that question where I'm absolutely sure. How many questions do I need to attempt, and how many questions is it that I have to stop myself? I think these permutations and combination come from practicing at home only. So my safe zone was around 45. So in at my last attempt also, in fourth attempt, I made sure that I was doing 43 questions, and I knew I would be able to clear CSAT.
What are the determinants that made you decide about your optional subject?
So since I've done my graduation in law, it was very easy for me to pick up law optional. Now I also understand that law optional is not the most scoring subject out there, but I thought I just preferred my comfort a little bit more than the score part. I thought if I have comfort, I'll be able to work hard and somewhere I'll be able to up my score. So my graduation in law was the major reason.
The difference in marks in GS 1 to 3 is less compared to those essay and GS 4. Now, two corollary follow from here. A, why it happens in the first place, and second, how the future student can leverage this piece of information to their advantage.
I would say, sir, this happens because GS4 and essay, it provides a lot of opportunity to the aspirants to show actually what they feel. Because if we see, GS1 to 3 have somewhere set answers and everybody know about them. GS4 and essay is where answers cannot be same for everyone. And that is why I feel that there is a huge mark difference. This time also I think there's a huge difference of marks, because that is where actually you can show your potential. My advice to the aspirants here would be that these are those papers for which extra efforts are needed. For example, for essay and ethics, I made sure that I practiced much more than I did for GS 1 to 3. I remember, around 8 essay tests, which means around 16 essays I had written before the actual essay paper had happened. So that is for essay. The same goes for ethics, because you have to write in that stipulated 3 hours and the questions can be very long also. So practice is the only key for essay as well as ethics, and understanding what is the demand of the question then.
And many experts believe that primacy and recency matters a lot.
Yes,
Getting best marks depends on how well you contextualize your answer and how effectively you conclude. Do you have any formula for how do you contextualize your answer and how you conclude?
So this was something that I had focused a lot upon. For example, since you asked about essay, now I had prepared certain topics for which intros and conclusions were already ready, which meant that when I went to the paper, actually I didn't have to think so much about what will be the intro, what will be the conclusion. So preparation of intros and conclusions is important, because that is the first impression we are leaving on the person who's going to check the examination. So I used to prepare my intros from newspapers also, from books also. And I remember in the essay that I had written finally, I had taken my introduction, which had just come 2 days before the actual examination. That had come in the newspaper, and I used the same in the essay examination also. So that intros have to be collected, conclusions also have to be collected.
Could you illustrate with the essay you attempted in the exam?
Yes, sir. So I had attempted that a ship in harbour is safe, but that is not what the ship is meant for, which basically meant that ship has a comfort zone, but it is meant to go out there in the waters, in those treacherous waters, and it has to face those things. So I started this with actually what Alia Bhatt had to say, the actress had to say in her interview. So she had just now started with her being now a producer. She's already a very well-defined actor. Now she's saying that I belong to creative arts. That is my basic domain. And now I'm very safe as an actor. It's my comfort zone. But that is not what creative arts is meant for. It is meant to explore more. And that is why as a producer, I'm here exploring more my abilities. So I started it on somewhere those lines, and I think that paid off also.
In the second essay, I found, for example, that you cannot step twice in the same river.
Yes, sir.
How do you start? How do you conclude?
So actually I had attempted the other essay. I don't remember that. It was somewhere related to the sun and roof part.
Best time to repair the roof is when sun is shining.
When the sun is shining. I don't remember the intro exactly, but somewhere also I had prepared the intro properly well, and the conclusions were also ready. So what I just had to do was just reproduce the same and then get back to the basic part. So everything was ready, I guess.
Now coming to the GS3,
Yes.
there was a question relating to challenges arising out of increase in life expectancy on the health.
So I again started it, the introduction with numbers. I talked about the life expectancy firstly. I talked about I had data ready with me on life expectancy. So I started with how the life expectancy was and where is the life expectancy. So this happened to be my introduction, and that is how I had explained that how life expectancy, then the contextual part happened. And in the end, I had ended this answer particularly talking about how our health also has to improve and how the health infrastructure also could improve. Then we can work on the life expectancy.
And
something
what
on
are the
those lines.
challenges arising out of this?
So challenges I had mentioned, because the strain which happens on the health infrastructure, we do not have that much health infrastructure ready as well also. And the resources, that is the limited resources availability for the rising life expectancy. So something on those lines I had written.
Coming to GS4,
Yes.
there was a question on Dalai Lama's quotation, judge your success by what you had to give up in order to get it. How do you answer this?
Because these are statement based questions, my strategy was any statement that comes, I have to explain firstly the quotation here. Now here the quotation was that judge yourself by what you have sacrificed. So I'd explained in the introduction only, I'd explained that the quote by the Dalai Lama, that means that also the sacrifices that we have made, that are very important in along with the fact that what we've achieved so far. So our achievements are also important, but our sacrifices are also equally important, because that does not make us delusional, or that does not leads us to a lot of frustration that we haven't been able to achieve so much. So sacrifices are also equally important. So I explained the particular quotation, and my ending was also somewhere on those lines, that how sacrifices have also to be kept into consideration.
And you gave some illustration to support your argument?
I did, sir. I think in this particular quotation, I couldn't give any example per se, but in the rest of the statement based questions, I have given sufficient examples.
Coming to your optional, the law of one,
Yes.
there was a question on the powers of the governor. Can the head of the state be truly described as the nerve center of our federal structure, and explain this in the light of duties and power of the governor?
Here my introduction, because it's a law paper, started with firstly mentioning the relevant articles here regarding governor, and now what I did here was that I make headings while explaining, so that what is asked in the question, I should be able to answer the same only. Now here I had mentioned that yes, the governor can be said to be the major nerve center of the federal system. I had mentioned his powers also, I had mentioned his role also, that how he is the center link between the center and the states, and I mentioned all of that. However, I then also mentioned there are certain challenges that remain. So I had mentioned 2-3 points about challenges, and then my conclusions was somewhere on lines of what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had to say about the office of governor. So that's how my
There was a question, can the cardinal principle of defending yourself to help yourself is based on private defense, and how do you justify that?
So again, started it with the sections of the Indian Penal Code, section 96 to 106. I started it with that. I explained a little bit about private defense, because the question was that private defense is necessary, but it's not absolute in nature. So I explained about private defense then, that why private defense is important, backed it up with certain case laws as well. Then I made a heading and said private defense is not absolute in nature, and this is the major chunk of my answer also. Not absolute in the sense I said one, it cannot be for unnecessary harm. Private defense also does not exist if I am the one who initiates something wrong, and then I cannot claim that I am a victim now, and that is why I use private defense. So I gave a lot of instances which were already there in my notes, so there were 6-7 of them. And then I concluded it with that private defense is a cardinal principle of Indian Penal Code. However, there are restrictions or exceptions in the same as well.
Your optional law, did it help in any of those GS 1, 2, 3, 4?
Absolutely. I think in GS2 it helps a lot, because GS2 has a major chunk of polity there, and the connection with law also exists. So I think there I have some sort of advantage. It becomes easier for me to understand a lot of topics. Then I can add case laws from law optional into that polity part. So that obviously exists.
Coming to the interview, you secured 204 marks. That's one of the highest. Do you recall certain questions which were asked by the board and you were very excited about that?
So my interview was 50% of my DAF and 50% was general questions. And now I was asked questions on, for example, the chairman sir had asked questions on what do you expect, how can the civil servants improve further, and he'd asked me about should we have a separate system, law and order, should that be separated from investigation. Then questions were from Haryana itself, which happens to be my home state also, what is the working of Khap Panchayats, Then it was from my hobbies also. Strength training happens to be one of my hobby. Why did you start? All of those questions. I think all of them were extremely exciting for me.
Outside DEF, what were other questions?
Outside DAFOS, there was a question on caste census, for example. There was question on delimitation, and then there were questions on, I remember, Bharat stage, the difference between Bharat stage 4 and Bharat stage 6. That was also there. And yes.
When you came out of the interview board, what were your thoughts going through your head and heart?
I was extremely worried because my interview had gone for so long. It went on for around 45 minutes. And everybody else was done by then. I was the last candidate to go. And I was worried about the fact because the interview had already happened when the chairman sir had asked question and the 4 other members also. But then again chairman sir had started asking questions. That was when I got really worried when I came out. I was wondering if something has gone wrong there, that why did he ask me questions again. So I was not expecting 204 at all.
By securing All India rank 14, you have revealed your strength, undoubtedly. Can you describe what are your weaknesses?
So I would say one of my biggest weaknesses, sometimes I go very rigid in terms of the fact that if I've prepared a schedule, if I've prepared something for myself, if I'm not able to complete that on time, or if I miss out on deadlines, sometimes I go very hard on myself. That's a weakness. I shouldn't be like that. There has to be some flexibility. I'm still learning how to be more flexible. I think that is a great weakness.
Anything else?
I think that is it, sir. That is.
So you are working on that?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
What makes you angry?
So I think this only. This makes me really angry. Why I'm not able to do that, and why is it? So then it's a very harsh. I think I go very harsh.
What makes you happy?
A lot of things, sir. Actually, recently I've been connected with an orphanage. Just visited there. Every month actually we have this thing that from my salary which is coming, which has just started coming actually, I go there and some part of it that goes to that orphanage. I think that has now recently, that is something that is making me really very happy to be able to do something.
You are already grounded in the bureaucracy. You will contribute much more. So Kritika, we were very happy to have you. My best wishes for all your future endeavors.
Thank you
you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much, sir.